Okay, today's article is called Wabanaki Governing Systems. And the Wabanaki are the native peoples of Maine, of this area. In fact, if you take a look here, today's article comes from the Maine Historical Society. Yes, it's in Newsella, but it's directly tied to us and the heritage and history of the place we live. So here is the first photo, and its caption reads, Penobscot tribal leader Nicholas Andrews is shown here wearing the ceremonial attire of the Penobscot people. So you can see him in his ceremonial clothing. And it looks like he's holding a bow and an arrow as well. I wish there was a date. I would love to know when this photo was taken. It looks very old. Okay, let's read about the peoples who lived here before the English arrived. Sovereign nations. Now, I usually tap on the screen as I read and make the little circles appear so you can sort of follow along. But right now, my computer's glitching, and when I do that, my screen jumps all over the place. So I'm just going to read today. All right, first section, sovereign nations. The Wabanaki people include the Maliseet, Micmac, Passamaquoddy, Penobscot, and Abenaki nations. The Wabanaki have maintained a nation-to-nation relationship with the United States since the creation of the country. Wabanaki people fought alongside colonists in the American Revolutionary War. However, the U.S. Congress never ratified agreements between the colonies and the Wabanaki. As Wabanaki people lost their legal appeals, state and federal agencies attempted to assimilate Wabanaki people and their land into the dominant white culture. That means that the government of the United States never lived up to its promises and the agreements that it made with the Wabanaki. And therefore, and then when the Wabanaki lost their court cases, their appeals, the government of the United States tried to make the Wabanaki people part. That's what assimilate means, make them part of the culture of America, the white people culture of America. Next paragraph. Micmac, Maliseet, and Passamaquoddy communities were split by the establishment of the international border. That is, when they established a border between Maine and Canada, the communities of these native tribes split because they were living on both sides of that line. It separated the U.S. and Canada. The border itself moved around for about 60 years. This started roughly with the Treaty of Ghent, in 1783, and ended with the Webster-Ashburn Treaty that resolved the Aroostook War in 1842. Today, like all 573 federally recognized tribes in the United States, the Maliseet, Micmac, Passamaquoddy, and Penobscot tribes are sovereign nations. That means they're free nations, free countries. They manage large tracts of tribal forest lands. They operate governments. They support educational and environmental initiatives and speak distinct languages. They run cultural centers that work to keep alive their languages and cultural traditions, like basket making. And here we have a photo. Isn't that beautiful? What is that? Let's read the caption to find out what this is. The caption says, trade was an early way to establish relationships and communication between the native groups and colonists. This silver brooch came from the family of James A. Purinton, an agent who worked with native groups between 1860 and 1864. So it's a pin you wear on your chest. Oh, that's beautiful. Wow. Okay. So where were we? Self-governance. Well, this is a weird picture for self-governance. It looks like a leather jacket with a painting on the back. Self-governance. Well, let's figure out what this picture is first. It says this jacket was created by Wallastoquick, which is Maliseet artist Gina Brooks. The jacket is from the American Eagle clothing brand, and it is Brooks's art. And Brooks's art represents her reclaiming the word Indian. Oh wow! So you can actually buy this from American Eagle. Oh, okay. Excuse me for my yawning. All right, let's keep reading. Wabanaki people have dual citizenship. They are citizens of their tribal nation and the United States. Indigenous citizens are the only people in the U.S. that do not have to let go of their national citizenship to also be a U.S. citizen. In other words, if you were to come from, say, Ireland, to become an American, you'd have to give up being Irish. I believe that's what it means. Most tribes in America have requirements for enrollment. However, the tribes are not all recognized by the federal government. 4 federally recognized tribal nations in Maine have always had a form of internal government. Today, they maintain tribal governments, community schools, cultural centers, and manage tribal lands and natural resources. Tribal councils govern the nations. An elected chief, also called a governor, is the head of the executive arm of government. In the past, the post of chief was hereditary. It was passed down from parent to child. So there's 4 recognized tribal nations in Maine, and they've always had their own government. And their own government does things like run community schools and cultural centers and manage the land and resources. Okay. The Holton Band of Maliseet Indians has 1,700 members as of 2019. They are led by elected tribal chief Clarissa Sabattis. They received federal recognition in 1980. Since then, they have built a tribal center on their lands along the Medunksnikeg River near Holton. Many Maliseets refer to themselves as Wallastokwiak, people of the St. John River. The Aroostook Band of... Oh, this is what happens when I try to touch the screen. It's jumping around today. Sorry. The Aroostook Band of Micmac Indians has 1,240 members. They are led by Chief Edward Peter Paul as of 2019. They received federal recognition in 1991. Excuse me. Recognition followed a long process of research and petitions to the U.S. government. The Passamaquoddy tribe has 2 reservations in Washington County. It has 3,369 tribal members. Matacokmekuk is located 50 miles inland at Indian Township. As of 2019, it is led by Chief William S. Nichols, Sr. Sepayik is on the ocean at Pleasant Point and led by Chief Marla Dana. The Passamaquoddy continued to inhabit their ancestral homeland 400 years after European contact. They received federal recognition during the 1970s. Recognition followed the Passamaquoddy versus Morton case in 1975. Before we go on, let's check out this picture here. Oh, you know what? I think we saw this when we went to the Maine Historical Museum, didn't we? This looks familiar. In fact, you know what? Now that I'm thinking of it, all of these things look familiar. I think we've seen this brooch, this jacket, and this club, which it says here is a root club made of birch tree wood, served as a weapon and status symbol. Individuals who carried pieces such as this one were seen as authority figures. I think we've seen these at the museum in the fall. Do they look familiar to you too? Okay. The Penobscot Indian Nation is one of the oldest continuously operating governments in the world. There are 2,398 Penobscot Nation members. Their tribal headquarters are at Indian Island in the Penobscot River near Old Town. As of 2019, they are led by Chief Kirk Francis. They received federal recognition during the 1970s after Passamaquoddy versus Morton case. There are many Wabanaki people living throughout Maine. The Abenaki people live in Maine as well, but are not recognized by the federal government. I believe it's the Abenaki who are closest to us here in York. They live in the southern part of Maine, I believe. All right, that is today's text.